And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Bible Study. I am Mike Carey, pastor of the First United Methodist Church of Nevada, Iowa, and thanks for stopping by this afternoon on this cold old morning afternoon. We are getting ready to continue our study of Luke's Gospel. Just a word of explanation if you weren't a part of Sunday school yesterday, and if you weren't, why weren't you? No. I bit my tongue rather nasty in my sleep a few days ago. It's swollen and sore, and so I have to kind of regulate the amount of talking I do and the way that I do it without moving my jaw an awful lot. So if I sound a little weird or look a little different in terms like I'm trying to be a ventriloquist or something like that, that's the reason why. And I apologize for that, but it is what it is. And so, those of you who watched the NFL yesterday, um, I'm an old Ohio boy, so I got to go, yay, Bengals, and put that one out there. However, with that game, I was in a quandary because I like the Kansas City Chiefs. I like Patrick Mahomes, even though it was Kansas City that beat my Vikings many, many years ago in like the third or fourth Super Bowl, the first AFC team to win a Super Bowl, but and of course over the Vikings. But I like them these days. But I'm an old Ohio boy. I remember when Paul Brown originally left the Cleveland Browns and started the Bengals as part of the original AFL. So I'm happy. My younger brother over in Ohio is happy that we got vested interest. As far as the NFC game yesterday, two West Coast teams, who cares? Anyway, word here for Bible study, right? So Luke's Gospel, chapter 8. We're up to verses 16 through 18 now, and you will recognize this, not so much probably as the way it appears in Luke. You'll recognize it as being something that Jesus talks about in another gospel in Matthew, where it has a bit more of a prominent posting. But let's get to it. The words of Jesus. No one lights a lamp and then hides it under a vessel or puts it under a bed. No, he puts it on a lampstand so that those who come in may see the light. There is nothing hidden which will not be made manifest. There is nothing secret which will not be known and brought into the open. Take care then how you listen, for to him who has it will be given, and from him who has not there shall be taken away even what he thinks he has. Now, these are the words of our Lord, and you'll recognize that, at least the candle being put under a bucket, but being put on a lampstand instead. You'll recognize that as appearing in the Beatitudes in Matthew, chapters 5, 6, and 7. That's where this particular teaching will show up, make itself known to us in the first place. And this is a little bit more of a different kind of setting. The Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, the question gets asked, was that actually a sermon that Jesus gave? Or is that a collection of things that Jesus said or themes that he used that he commonly taught on? It could be both. We don't know for sure. My thought is that it most likely is both Matthew and here in Luke, is the collection of things that Jesus said that were his normal talking points. I don't think that he was always coming up with something new and extemporaneous. I think he had certain themes that he hit on with people time and time again. Not that he didn't teach on a variety of things. I think he did, but I think these are the high notes. These are the highlights, as you might want to say. It also, though, could be uh, this is a time when he sat them all down, and this is what he taught them. Uh, because the Jewish form of teaching and preaching was not so much as we think of it and see it today. We think of it as developing an idea, a linear thought, developing it, and then reaching a conclusion. Jewish thinking was more to go from point to point to point to point, because they thought that people would quickly lose interest if they spent too much time on one idea. And we're pretty much the exact opposite. So it could be that. This could be an example of the rabbinical style of preaching teaching that was common in that day. You can make your choice one way or the other. I don't think uh, either one of those is wrong. Either one could be right. So, but Jesus makes three specific points here, at least as in my way of thinking. First of all, he's stressing that Christianity needs to have an essential conspicuousness about it. It needs to be something that is seen. The gospel writers will talk about Jesus had secret followers. Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea are listed as being secret followers of Jesus, and they were secret because they feared the Jews. They feared retribution coming upon them because Jesus was so extremely unpopular amongst the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Is there such a thing as a secret follower of Jesus today? I don't think you can be. I think either you are or you aren't. Let's just put it that way. If Because Jesus says, if you are embarrassed to proclaim me in front of people, I will be embarrassed to proclaim you in front of the Father. Whoa, and I don't particularly want that to happen. I don't think anybody else does either on that day. I want Jesus to claim me as his own. And so, therefore, consequences be damned in this world. I belong to Jesus. I want to seek his will. His will is not always readily apparent. And, you can make that claim, but never hesitate to make the claim that you belong to Jesus Christ, that you are a follower of his, and you're seeking to do and discover what his particular will is. Now, that said, I don't think it's a good thing to flaunt your Christianity, because that was basically what the Pharisees did. They flaunted their spirituality in front of other people. Look how spiritual we are. They would put whitewash on their faces to make themselves look gaunt, so that people would know that they were fasting. Look how pale and sickly they look because they're fasting so much because they're so spiritual. That type of thing is not good. You don't flaunt your faith in order to just get attention and for people to think you're such a super spiritual Christian. Christianity is something that needs to be seen, but it needs to be seen for the right reasons. Be seen as a person who is standing for righteousness. I recall in today's devotional, which you'll see later, I make mention of the fact that I saw on watching the sports highlights here a few days ago, the incident that happened in Philadelphia at the Philadelphia 76ers Los Angeles Lakers basketball game, where a fan was taunting Laker player Carmelo Anthony with racist taunts. He was using the boy word, calling him boy. And that's just not acceptable. And the fan was ejected. Carmelo, wanted to go take the fan on, confront him. But it just, reminds me of just, how terrible that type of thing is. And it reminded me of long ago, far away, shortly after I had become a Christian myself. In fact, I had become a Christian late September 1969. And in December of 1969, I went back to my hometown over Christmas vacation, and I met up with an old buddy of mine, high school buddy. He was going to Bible college down in Cincinnati and had heard about me coming to Christ. And he wanted to get together and talk and visit. He was preparing for the ministry. I had never thought of him as an individual that would do that. He was like me. He was an old farm boy. He was the oldest of five kids, and they attended a United Church of Christ church over on the other side of town, or the community. They lived originally south of Fredericktown. They went to the UCC church over on the would have been the northwest side of town, and they're a good Christian family. I didn't particularly know it. I just knew they went to church. I didn't know the dynamic of faith in their household, but I found out. Anyway, long story short here. We decided to get together, go to a high school basketball game. We got seats, 3 or 4 rows up right mid-court, and we weren't paying a whole lot of attention to the game because we were talking back and forth and revisiting old times and renewing our friendship. And he and I had been on the football team together. And there was one African American young man in our entire high school when I was growing up. And he was a year behind us. And the only mob violence I have ever been involved in was partly because of him. We had finished my senior year a football game against a nasty traditional rival. Went to meet at half in the middle of the field to shake hands. And our African American brother took off his helmet, extended his hand to shake hands, and the guy from the other team spit on him, which resulted in a melee, a riot, literally. Middle of the field, stands emptied, cops couldn't do anything about it, and we were lucky to get away with our lives because it was in their town, not in ours. Anyway, so we're sitting at the basketball game. This is over a year later. We've graduated. But our African American friend it's his senior year, and he's on the basketball team. They're playing a conference rival. And as we're sitting there talking, the game ends. And basically, the same thing happens again. Team from the other, they go to shake hands, and a member of the other team spits on our African American friend. And of course, teams meet at mid-court. There's a riot. There's a melee. Fans emptying. This is in our hometown. And instead of charging out there, my friends and I kind of looked at each other and shook our heads because now we were seeing things from a different perspective. We were seeing it as Christians. And my friend looked at me and said, "Once more into the breach?" And I never thought of him as an old farm boy, dairy farm boy, quoting, an epic poem to me. But I said, yeah. And so we went out there, only this time we were trying to pull players apart and people apart and get people into their respective locker rooms. And we were trying to be the peacemakers in the midst of chaos. And so instead of being cut, because if it had been a year before, we would have been there as combatants. But now, no. And it's been the case many times now over the years. Unfortunately, strangely enough, I have found myself in the midst of those kinds of situations, and I end up being the peacemaker, which is the way it should be, because that's what Christians should be, ought to be, striving to be those who make peace, who keep the peace, who try to build bridges between people, not divide them. And that's one of the things that is so pervasive in politics nowadays. People are trying to create divisions and burn bridges and say it's my way, not the highway. Democracy cannot work that way. Society cannot work that way. We all have to learn to work together, and that's just the only way it can be. So, the writer is telling us here that even though we may be different, we need to learn to get along. Let your light shine. Your Christianity cannot be hidden It has to be able to be seen. It has to be functional in the situation that it finds itself in. You cannot be, it's like chickens. We raise chickens. And one of the things I learned about chickens is that when you raise them, they need to be gender. Well, they need to be specific in terms of the kind of chickens they are. If you put a different chicken from, for example, if you've got Rhode Island Reds and you put a chicken in there that's not a Rhode Island Red, that's different, that looks different, as obviously is different, like a Banny, the other chickens will peck it to death. They can't stand something that's different. Society tends to be that way, and we can't be that way. Instead of pecking somebody to death because they're a little bit different, we need to be accepting, because with Jesus, Jesus brings out strength and diversity because he makes us one. There is strength in diversity, greater strength than trying to be separated from one another. So your Christianity needs to be obvious in that sense. People need to be able to see it. Verse 17 also stresses the impossibility then of secrecy. And there are various peoples that will try to hide things like their faith. Sometimes we'll try to hide things from ourselves. It's called self-denial. When you've got something going on, something that's not necessarily good. For example, you're sick, and you are in denial over that illness, or you've lost someone and you're in denial over that. They'll come back, they'll come home, or oh, this is just a little thing, and the doctor's saying no, this is serious, you need to do this or that or the other. People will try to deny it, and that's probably in most cases the worst possible thing you can do. Sometimes we try to hide things from the people around us. But you know what? Things have a way of coming out. A person who is keeping secrets is essentially an unhappy person. An architect one time offered to build a house for the great philosopher Plato and said, I can build you a house where no human eyes can see into it, see any room at all. Plato said, I will pay you double what you're asking if you can build me a house where human eyes can see into every room, because he knew that hiding secrets, keeping secrets, is basically an unhappy person. And sometimes we try to hide things from God. Worst possible plan ever, because you can't do that. And sometimes we don't even try to hide. It's the old Katzenjammer Kid thing, where they say, if I do it, I get a whipping, I'll do it anyway. I don't care. And I know what is right, but I'm going to do what I want, whatever it might be, however wrong it may be, because I want what I want, and that's the way it's going to be. That's what I want. And so we need to understand that you go back to Genesis 16:13, we're told God is the God who sees all things. He is the God of seeing. He does not turn the blind eye, or do this kind of a routine. Well, what are you doing? I can't see you. He does see. He does know. And while he does understand, he also understands that when we try to rationalize, when we try to talk our way out of things. So there you go. So don't be an individual who tries to hide things. God sees anyway. We know that. So there's also then the idea here that those who, and Luke lays this down, he does it in kind of a convoluted fashion. Matthew lays it out a lot more clearly, but those who have will get more, and those who do not will lose what they have. Basically, you can put that here in terms of any ability. If you have an ability to do a certain thing, if you stop doing it in terms of that ideas or skills development, you're going to fall behind, and you're going to lose out eventually. If you continue to learn, if you have the gift of learning and you keep learning and you keep learning, you will learn more and you will gain more. But once you stop learning, once you give up in terms of learning, the relevancy of what you know will eventually diminish and will go away. So the seeker will always find, but the person who stops seeking is going to lose everything that they have. Pretty simple, and yet that's pretty much a universal understanding, a universal law, as I would understand it. So always be a learner, always be a seeker, especially after the will of God for your life. God always has something more for you in terms of your life and what there is to do. Even as you're getting down to the tail end of it, as I am at this point, eventually, there's a lot more of the road behind me than there is in front of me, but there is still road left out there. There is still stuff to do. There's still stuff to understand. There is still the will of God to discern for my life. And the same thing is true of you as well. So keep that in mind then as you go forth. Do good. Right if you get work, send money if you do. Thanks for stopping by this afternoon and spending a little time in the Word of God with me. Like I said, I'm Mike Carey, First Church, United Methodist Church in Nevada, Iowa, and I hope the Lord blesses you real good.